Hi, this is Isaac Conlon, Planning Manager for the City of Federal Way. I'd like to run through a short PowerPoint presentation on political, real estate, temporary advertising, and civic event signs. First, let's talk about political signs. These signs are exempt from the need to obtain a sign permit. You're allowed up to 6 square feet of sign face per sign. These signs must be removed within 7 days of the election. These signs are allowed on private property. They're not allowed in the right-of-way, so an important distinction here. And I should point out that when I say that they're allowed on private property, it's still the responsibility of the person or group putting up the sign to obtain permission from the property owner to place the sign there. But from the city's perspective, that's a matter between those individuals. And so from our perspective, we just require that they not be located within the right-of-way. And then additionally, these signs may not be attached to utility poles or other objects like fences, etc. So from a practical perspective, how do we determine whether the signs are located within the right-of-way? The way that we do that is through the use of what we call right-of-way indicators. And I'll have a graphic momentarily, but what those indicators are utility poles or other types of public infrastructure such as power cabinets or vaults or fire hydrants that are located along the edge of the right-of-way. Fences are assumed to depict the boundary between private property and the right-of-way. And then city-maintained landscaping, so perhaps you have a roadside swale which is mowed by the city, and then you have some taller vegetation adjacent to that. The mowed area is considered to be located within the right-of-way, and the unmaintained vegetation is considered to be private property, so the sign could be located in that unmowed area. So here's a graphic. This sign, as you can see, is located behind the sidewalk, and the reason why this sign is considered to be correctly located is because it is located further to the private property side of this utility indicator, which looks like some sort of power company utility, but you can see that the sign is located further back from the right-of-way from that utility, and hence it is considered to be appropriately located. And then the last thing I would say about the political signs is we would ask that an individual from the campaign be responsible for monitoring the placement of the signs. And we, of course, understand that you have a lot of volunteers in certain cases working for you. We're glad to meet with a representative from the campaign, and we'd actually go out in the field and identify appropriate locations for the signs. Glad to work with you so that you don't get your signs picked up by enforcement action, which I'll come back to at the end of the presentation just so you understand how we do sign code enforcement. Next, let's talk about real estate signs. So the first type is an on-site advertising sign as depicted in the graphic here. These signs are exempt from permit requirements again. You're allowed one of these signs per street frontage. They're allowed up to 6 square feet in size. These signs must be removed when the property is sold or rented or leased. Perhaps it's a commercial situation, that type of thing. And again, these signs are not allowed within the right-of-way. Pretty straightforward. So next, let's talk about real estate signs within the right-of-way, and particularly within residential zoning districts. There's a slight difference in how they're treated in residential zones as compared to commercial zones. So again, these signs are exempt from permit requirements. You're allowed up to 10 signs per residence that's listed for sale, 6 square feet in size, up to 30 inches in height, not affixed to the ground. These are intended to be portable signs. Most typically we're talking about A-board type signs, or although it could be some other type of portable sign that's not attached to the ground. And the signs may not be attached to other objects such as utility poles, fences, etc. Additionally, these signs are allowed between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. or sunset, whichever comes later. So the idea is that these are allowed during daylight hours, and they must be picked up during overnight hours, and then they can be set out again the next day. We ask that you put a name and phone number on each of the signs. These signs may be located in the planter strip. And again, I'll have a graphic momentarily. The reason I've highlighted this provision is that this is the only type of private advertising sign that the city allows to be located within the planter strip. These signs may also be located sort of behind the sidewalk at the back edge of the right-of-way, and I'll have a graphic of that also. So those are the two places within the right-of-way where these signs can be located. The signs may not be located in the traveled portion of the right-of-way. So obviously the vehicular travel lanes, they cannot be located on the sidewalk. They also cannot be located in the center median or in a roundabout area in the center of the right-of-way. They cannot be located in on-street parking spaces or driveways. And then lastly, this provision was adopted in 2011 to help mitigate the effects of the downturn in the residential real estate market. It was intended to be a temporary provision, so this particular provision for signs within the right-of-way in residential zones sunsets at the end of 2013. So I have a couple of graphics here. I've sort of blocked out the advertising message on each sign just because people are sometimes sensitive about the use of their information in a presentation like this. So looking at the picture on the left, that is an A-board sign located within the planter strip in a residential zone, so that is a permitted location. Technically, the sign should not be sitting on the curb. It should be fully located within the planter strip, but this is the photograph I had available to use. So that is a permissible location for that sign, provided it meets the height requirement and the other conditions which I've described. The photograph on the right depicts a sign that is located within the right-of-way at the back edge of the right-of-way. So you can see that it's located behind the sidewalk. And the reason I say that this sign is located within the right-of-way is because it may be hard to see, but there is a telephone pole or a power pole located sort of in the same alignment with the sign, so that suggests that it's likely located within the right-of-way in this case, and that is an appropriate location for this type of sign. Next, let's talk about commercial signs, including real estate signs, located in the right-of-way. And the distinction here is that these signs that I'll talk about next are located in non-residential zones, but again, in the right-of-way. Very similar to what we just talked about, but there are a couple of differences. So again, these signs are exempt from permit requirements. The signs are allowed during the same time period, 9 o'clock till 5 p.m. till sunset, again, whichever is later. You're allowed 2 signs for advertising your business. Now, if you have an open house, for example, a real estate open house or some sort of special sale or event at your business, during the time period while this event is in operation, you're allowed up to 10 signs during that time period. Again, 6 square feet in size. And then I've underlined a couple of provisions which are different in commercial zones. So the big difference here is that these signs are not allowed in the planter strip. They are allowed, again, at the back edge of the right-of-way. Also, these signs are allowed at 36 inches in height, which is a little taller. They're 30 inches in height in the residential zones. So as I said, they're allowed at the back edge of the sidewalk. This sign, you can see it's sort of in line with a number of different utility indicators. There's a power pole, what looks like an electric vault of some type, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's a fire hydrant sort of directly behind the sign. And then this feature on the ground, sort of to the right side of the sign, looks like some sort of power vault. So this sign is considered to be located in the right-of-way at the back edge of the right-of-way, and that is a location where these signs are allowed to be located. So next, I wanted to talk briefly about garage sale and civic and community event type signage. Again, in the right-of-way. These signs are actually treated identically to the last category I talked about. They're not called out specifically in the code, so I just want to make it clear that they're treated as other commercial advertising signs. So therefore, I'll just run through these really quickly. Again, these signs are exempt from permit requirements. They may be located at the back edge of the right-of-way, as in the last graphic that we looked at. Less than 36 inches in height, less than 6 square feet in size. You're allowed up to 10 signs for your garage sale. Signs are allowed between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. to sunset. And again, may not be attached to anything, so these are portable type signs. Typically, the type of sign that's allowed here is an A-board sign. We also allow garage sale signs on private property. These, again, are exempt from a sign permit. We allow these up to 8 square feet in size, 5 feet in height. No more than 6 such signs are allowed per event. And the signs must be removed immediately following the sale, and each sign must contain the address of where the sale is located. And then the last category I'll talk about is the civic and community event signs on private property. This is the only type of sign of the different categories I've talked about that does require a temporary sign permit. That's a very easy permit to obtain, quick and easy. Again, these are located on private property, so in this category they're not allowed within the right-of-way. These signs are allowed up to 5 square feet in size. The number of signs allowed is determined on a case-by-case basis. We're pretty flexible about that. If it's a reasonable, depending on the size of the event, we'll allow you to put up the number of signs that you think is appropriate. Again, these are portable signs, so they're not attached to any other type of structures, except for we also allow banners, which are allowed to be attached to buildings. And those banners can be up to 32 square feet in size. And lastly, these signs are allowed to be placed 30 days prior to the event, and we ask that they're removed within 5 days after the event. So now I'll talk about enforcement in general of signs that are incorrectly placed in the right-of-way. And signage in the right-of-way is our primary emphasis for enforcement. Just in general, I would say that our sign code enforcement is very conservative. And what I mean by that is that if there's a question as to whether the sign is placed correctly or incorrectly, we'll err on the side of being cautious about removing that sign. So a sign that, it's questionable, it might be in the right-of-way where it's not supposed to, or it might be placed incorrectly in the right-of-way. If there's some question about that, we're probably going to leave that sign where it is. So it's more so the blatant type violations of the code that we'll do enforcement on. The way that we do that enforcement is the first thing that happens is a photograph is taken of the sign in case there's any questions later about whether it was placed correctly or not. The sign is then picked up and brought to City Hall. We store those signs for 14 days, and then we dispose of those signs. The signs may be retrieved by making an appointment with Jack Johnson. He's our sign code enforcement staff person. Jack works a half-time schedule, and when he does work, he's typically out in the field, so you're not likely to get him at his desk. But what you can do is call and leave a voicemail and ask him to get back in touch with you and set up a time to come in and pick up your signs. His number is 253-835-2637. And lastly, there's a charge of $5 per sign that is picked up. And that is the end of my presentation. A lot of information. If you have additional questions, please feel free to contact the Permit Center at 253-835-2607 or email to permitcenter@cityofederalway.com. Thank you.